all, Mike Falkenstein here with 1-8 Catalyst, and this is episode 3 of our new video series that we're calling Building on the Foundation. And in this episode, I'm going to answer the question, what is a disciple of Jesus? This may, on the surface, seem to be ground that has already been covered, but it is surprising to me how many Christians don't know the answer to this question. And it's particularly important because of the biblical imperatives we find around not just being a Christian, but being a fully devoted disciple of Jesus. So I start this episode with a couple of quick definitions that I hope will lead to some distinctions. So I must first define what is a Christian. So a Christian is someone who has trusted Christ for forgiveness of sin and been assured of life forever with Jesus. A disciple, however, is someone who not only meets the previous definition of a Christian, but is someone who is following Jesus in an effort to learn how to become more like him. It's interesting to note, actually, that in the early church, those that accepted Christ were just called disciples. For example, as the Apostle Paul was starting his ministry in the early chapters of Acts, he was seeking to make disciples. In Acts 14, for example, after a disturbance and an attempted stoning in Iconium, we see Paul and Barnabas' focus in ministry in Derbe was not to make converts, but to make disciples. In Acts 14:21, for example, we read, when they had preached the gospel to that city and made many disciples. The goal of evangelism has always been to make disciples and not merely Christians. This is true not only in the early church, but also today in the command Jesus gives us all in Matthew 28:19 to go therefore and make disciples of all nations. Okay, so what is a disciple? A common definition of a disciple is someone who adheres to the teachings of another. A disciple is a student and follower, one who believes and trusts in a teacher and follows that teacher's words and example. The word disciple refers to someone who adopts the ways of someone else. To be a disciple is to be in an instructive, intimate, and imitative relationship with a teacher. When applied to Jesus, then, a disciple is someone who learns from Jesus how to live like Jesus, someone who conforms his or her words and ways to the words and ways of Jesus. Consequently, being a disciple of Jesus Christ is being in relationship with Jesus and seeking to be like him. In other words, we follow Christ to be like Christ because as his disciples, we belong to Christ. Trusting, obeying, and listening to Christ is what a Christian does. As a consequence, being a Christian is being a disciple from the beginning until today. So there are 3 distinctives of a disciple of Jesus that I'd like to point out. Number 1, a disciple of Jesus listens to Jesus. One could never claim to be a disciple of a teacher without being ready to listen to that teacher. A disciple of Jesus listens to him, and when Jesus speaks, the disciple listens. The disciple clings to every word of the master as if that word were bread for the hungry or water for the thirsty. When Jesus gathered together his disciples on the Mount of Transfiguration, God the Father spoke from heaven with a clear command in Matthew 17:5. He says, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him." To be a disciple implies that you listen intently to Jesus. Okay, number 2, disciple learns from Jesus. The disciple must not only listen to Jesus. A disciple does not listen and then turn away as though the teacher's word had no impact. When Jesus calls his disciples, he instructs them to learn from him as well as to listen. We see this clearly in Matthew 11:29 as Jesus says, "Take my yoke upon you and what? And learn from me. For I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." To be a disciple is to be a learner, and the words of Christ carry weight. The disciple's greatest desire is learning from Christ and is foundational to all that he or she believes. Joyfully receiving the words of the Master is vital as daily food. The disciple meditates on them day and night. Okay, so the third characteristic of a disciple of Jesus is that disciple also obeys Jesus. No one may call himself a disciple of Jesus who's not willing to obey him. The disciple will put into practice what he learns from time with Jesus. Because Jesus has proven himself worthy, not obeying him is just not an option. A passage in Luke 6 always resonates very powerfully with me. Jesus uses an analogy of building a house either on a weak or strong foundation. And then he states in verse 46, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I tell you? Everyone who comes to me and hears my words," and pay attention here, listener, "everyone who comes to me and hears my words and does them, I will show you what he is like. He is like a man building a house who dug deep and laid a foundation on the rock." Jesus himself here tells us that we show him that what we think of him and whether we love him by our level of obedience. Okay, as I finish this episode, I must talk briefly about why this is so important. Simply put, Jesus wants us to be his disciple because doing so leads to an abundant life. Jesus instructs us directly in John 10:10 that the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Our best life is lived as we seek deep communion with God, and his glory is revealed as we grow more like Jesus. Abandonment of your own will to his commands leads to this abundant life full of purpose and joy. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be alerted as we create more content like this. And if you'd like this video, share it with a friend on social media. And to find out more about what we're doing here at 18 Catalyst, be sure to go to our website at 18catalyst.org. Thank you again. And for now, grace and peace to you.